fellow councillors and board members, I welcome you to this morning's meeting, and we're missing a few people already, I can see. I'd just like to do a karakia for Richard, and I have a favourite saying that I think fits him well. I shall pass through this world but once. Any good thing, therefore, that I can do, or any kindness that I can show to any fellow creature, let me do it now. Let me not defer nor neglect it, for I shall not pass this way again. And when one thinks of Richard, you think of the community, his family, his love of riding his bike, and he was what you'd call a very fine New Zealander and a jolly good all-round man. So just wanted to remember him this morning in this community committee because he was community. So I declare the meeting open. Call for apologies. Have we any?
No, I think they might just be late.
Right. And we've got, oh God, I lost it then. Declaration of interests. I think we're all interested. I always saw that as a conflict of interest, and I don't think anybody has got one, do they? No. Within, we have got no one for public forum. So we move to 9.2, page 11. And 9.1, which is the community forum outcomes. Greer, would you like to report on this?
Sure. Morena Community Committee. So on page 7, report 9.1 is the community forums outcome report. We have had, there's probably one amendment I need to make to this particular report, is that there is one that I omitted that Councillor Wickers brought up to me this morning. There was a December Te Puke Makatū community forum. Those notes haven't been made publicly available yet, but they will do after this meeting. So they will be on our website and sent to Councillor Wickers to send round to the people that attended that community forum. So I'm happy to take the report as read and answer any questions.
I'd like to ask you the one of trimming of the wattles in Little Waihi. Laura, you raised this issue, I think you did, and it was the fact that our staff will go and trim a tree and then they go away and then they come back and do another tree, and instead of doing them all at the one time. And so that's something I think, Greer, if you can make sure that that goes back to the staff, I think would be appropriate. Well, you can suggest that in your monitoring committee. Right. James.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I had a question or a request of an update for a resolution from the October Community Committee meeting regarding the last 70 metres of number 3 road and assessing it, where we resolved that it should be assessed against the policy for maintaining previously unmaintained roads. And I wouldn't mind an update where that is or what's happened to that resolution.
So we're still waiting on feedback from staff about that one, but happy to report back on the next community committee.
Thank you.
Councillor Daly.
I'm just wondering, I'd like to make a recommendation to the committee. Should I do that after the report's received?
After we've dealt with the reporting back of the forums, it was in relation to the forums
Yes.
for the Makatū Te Puke. Do it now, Grant.
Okay. It's regarding the speed indication device cameras that has been brought up several times at several forums and requests for new locations, and I'd like to put a recommendation to the effect the community committee recommends that council formalise a rotation schedule of locations for the speed indication device, including new locations that have been requested through the community forums.
Could we tighten that one up a bit? Eat it?
Shall I write it down?
Just repeat what you were saying.
That the community committee recommends council establish a formal rotation schedule for the speed indication device camera across the district, including the locations requested at the community forums.
Right. Yep. Is there a... Thank you, Andy. Jane?
I had more of a question before we get too far. I recall we had discussed that at some level at some point. I can't recall the exact context, but I do recall we had discussed where they might go and some sort of rotation. I can't remember where it got to, so I don't know if there's a staff member who could advise us on that. I'm cautious about supporting a recommendation if we've already had this discussion before, and I'm not quite can't remember where it got to, but.
Thanks, James. That's helpful. Rachel?
The appropriate staff member, through you, Madam Chair, to whom this particular question or issue should be directed is Cedric. Cedric's not available this morning, but what we can do is we can check with Callum and Cedric whether or not, I certainly don't recall that conversation was actually at this committee. It might very well have been through the Projects and Monitoring Committee. So we'll see if we can get that clarification. I'll see if I can make contact with Cedric now in advance of moving this recommendation.
We'll hold it over. Thank you.
Yeah, I understand. We were advised at the time that there were several locations that the camera was moved around and a maximum of 10 locations, but I think there was only 7 that were regularly used. But so I haven't seen any formal proposals come forward in any other committees to date, but certainly it'd be good to get that clarification. And just as a further information, the camera has been sitting in Te Puke since before Christmas. It's still sitting there. The battery's been flat, it hasn't been operational, so it just seems like a lost opportunity. At the Pukehina Ratepayers AGM, the local policeman gave an update, and I did ask him if he thought these cameras were effective. He thought it would be effective if it was installed at Pukehina as they requested several times. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Daly. Well, we'll hold it over until we hear back from Cedric Crowe. Any other questions from the forum reporting back? Councillor Henry?
Yeah, mine is around the information that we are capturing from the forums and the information that the people who attend the forums prior to and during the forums are acquiring. I want to congratulate the staff, in particular Greer, for the way that the information has been captured and written in here, and also how we're having them leading into our committee meetings too. It's very, very valuable. Thank you. But in the beginning, and I know there's a mixed feeling about some of the forums, but we would be doing workshops with our communities on various things without staff. So the forums are an added thing that we have got staff, and we are actually capturing that information that people are saying out in the community, and it is coming to this committee, and it is being dissipated through all the committees that are operating in council. So it is a very worthwhile process, and things move through very quickly. compared to what they would have done if we just received them when we were just talking in a small workshop with no staff there. And in the beginning, we had a lot of our GMs coming, which are the ones that would answer questions. So what I would like to recommend or ask that we explore ways that we can actually get information, if we get the questions early enough, and we have been doing that we can actually take to the meeting to answer the questions, rather than GMs having to come out. Now, I did that with Alison, and there was a question about the building process, the consent process. The person didn't want to attend the meeting because they were going through it, but she provided details for us to read out. So if there's a firming up way that we all know that we can do that, that's what I would like to explore. Thank you.
I'd like to make comment about the drainage out at Makatu, because there was a lady there who was very concerned about the flooding of the creek behind her property, and I'm not quite sure whether it was for water supply or just what, but it was coming up and down far too frequently, and that's gone to Water Services. Greer, have you had any response at this stage?
So I know it has been escalated to Cedric, our GM, for infrastructure services. So we are going to follow up, committed to following up through the Makatu Community Board, because it's an issue that they've raised quite frequently.
Right. So in bringing it here, it comes up again, and so it should really be resolved.
So, and my idea behind sending it to the Makatu Community Board is that that's in 3 weeks' time, as opposed to we're waiting another 12 weeks to report back to the Community Committee, but happy to bring it back, to circle back if you like.
Has it come up at your community board before?
So, yeah, two things that always come to the table, which is one of them is drainage. And I suppose bringing it to the community committee was another angle for the community, because it didn't feel like the community board was able to do a lot. Like, to be fair too, I can tell staff what I think might be needed, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that happens. Yeah. And we feel, Makatu as a whole feels that our stormwater network anyway has been severely neglected for a long time, and it is causing major concerns in terms of flooding. We did have that big flooding event, and that really terrified people, and I know it's probably a once in a 20 to 50 year thing, but it's still very, very raw, and every time it rains now, everybody is very agitated. So hopefully we can sort something out in terms of regular maintenance that we deserve.
Right. So, Greer, if it goes to the community board, could you make sure that it comes back here as well, and that we resolve the issue one way or the other? If two committees are onto it, we should be successful. I thought it was really wonderful in the Kaimai Forum. Hardly anybody came, and but one, Nicola James, came from Kumi Kumi Road to Amokoroa, right outside of her area, and I thought that contribution was really quite significant. And obviously Ohauiti is missing out, so to the chairman of the forum, Councillor Thwaites, maybe we could go to Ohauiti. That's just a suggestion for you next time. All right? So I will move.
Sorry, we just lost him.
Councillor Gowdy.
Can you put your mic on, please, Ross?
In various forums in our area, the subject of Waihi Beach pensioner housing has been brought up. Can anyone tell us when the council is going to have any discussion about replacing the 7 that have been now dismantled?
Greer?
No, I can't provide any information on that right now, but I can get that from the relevant staff member and feedback if you like.
We'll have that information for you after morning tea at the latest.
Long-term plan?
Well, that's what we've got to find out.
Through you, Madam Chair, I'm not sure that morning tea is a realistic timeframe to provide that information, but I can get it to you as soon as possible.
Thank you, Greg.
Might like to repeat your question, Councillor, Member Gowd.
Madam Chair, is the replacement of the 7 units at Waihi Beach elderly housing going to come up in the long-term plan?
Through you, Madam Chair. Okay, so I'll attempt to answer that. So this afternoon, not this afternoon, but today, in our workshop component of the Community Committee, Simon and Jodie will be presenting on the next iteration of our Housing Action Plan. We expect that as a consequence of shaping up the action plan for the next 3 years, there will ultimately need to be a conversation around Waihi Beach and its elder housing. That won't be today. It will likely be a further workshop of council.
Thank you.
But at this stage, what I can signal is that there are no immediate plans within the long-term plan to replace the 7 demolished elder housing units, because that is a more strategic conversation that needs to happen with council first.
Thank you, Rachel. That's good. Now, Grant, your recommendation is lying on the table until we heard back from Rachel. You might like to repeat it for her.
So again, Madam Chair, I can recall the recommendation that's on the table, and just to advise that I have walked the halls of this building and Ashley is intending to pop in shortly to provide an update just on that mobile variable speed trailer topic. The number 1 road topic that was raised number 3 road topic that was raised will likely need to lie on the table until the Projects and Monitoring Committee.
We should move that then, that it lie onto the table. Oh. Excuse me, Ashley, you've just arrived in time. Gray's going to read out the recommendation for you, Ashley, and hopefully you'll be able to answer.
Well, you could, Grant said he was ready, so I'm happy for him to read it out.
Ashley, that a formal rotation schedule of locations be established for the speed indication device camera, including the new locations requested through community forums. I could specify the locations, but, well, including Pukahina, number 1 road, Wilson Road South and Paengaroa, and whatever other locations council currently.
Councillor Daly, just could you also include where that machine is at the moment?
It's currently sitting in Te Puke by the Ohini Anga Bridge. It's been there since before Christmas and operational, and just been, every time I drive past, I wonder when it's going to start working or be moved to another location.
And there we are. Well, how's that sounding, everybody? Good. Yep, I understand that unit is a Wakakotahi asset. I'm not 100% sure. It was the speed indication units were previously managed by Westlink, and obviously we're in between contractors at the moment. So unfortunately, I don't have an answer. We can go away and just see what I can do to resolve that.
So you'll report back to operations and monitoring, whichever is the first committee. Is that the case?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to do that. I'll forward the information on to Greer and her team.
And if you could let Greer know so she can inform everybody around this table as well.
Yep, I'm happy to do that for you. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Right.
Ashley, thanks for the update. I think former advice we had from other transport engineers was that it was in fact a council asset rather than a Wakakotahi asset, but be good to get clarification on that, and that they were quite expensive because we suggested maybe we purchase another one. So my understanding was that it was a council asset, but it'd be good to get clarification on that as well.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I'll get. Yeah, unfortunately, I've just been caught on the hop a little bit this morning. I'm not 100% sure of where we're at with those assets, but I'll look into it and report back.
Thank you, sir. That's helpful. So any other questions about community forum while we've got our staff here? No, everybody's quiet. Councillor Henry.
I'm not sure where this will fit, but when the forums have talk around that we're not fully represented across the whole district, and I'm just wondering whether there is something that we can do about that to capture it. I know we don't have a forum, but is there some other form of meeting those communities, the commitment that we are giving to the other groups within our community, but others are missing out on having a forum type opportunity to speak with us.
Mr. Mayor?
The whole point of the community forums is that they can go anywhere they want and speak to anyone in the community. I don't think we need an extra layer. They are to, at least partially, to fill the gaps that the community boards can't reach with their coverage. And maybe I've misunderstood, but I don't think there's any. They are designed to cover anyone.
Yep, that's good to know. So are we currently doing that now?
Well, that's up to the conveners. That's your job.
No, I'm asking, are we currently doing that now? Because I don't think that we are, but I might be wrong.
They're covering as best they can. It's up to the conveners to choose where to meet and who to meet with, and that's their job. They've got almost complete freedom to do that. I mean, there are limitations in the sense that, if you have a handful of meetings a year, you're not going to get to every little hamlet, but that's just reality.
It's quite confusing listening to this conversation from up here. Exactly what do you want, Councillor Henry?
Well, we have representatives that cover a certain nominated area, and other areas that don't have a forum that is actually...
No, the forums cover the whole district.
They cover all the way...
All district, that's the whole point.
Who covers the... Oh, yeah, so we've got Omokoroa and Te Puna, but that covers all the,
It's Kaimai
The
Ward.
Kaimai
The
Ward.
Kaimai
And who
Community
covers
Forum
all the-
covers all of Kaimai Ward.
so,
I mentioned before that Nicola James from Kumi Kumi Road, right at the top of the Kaimai Ward, came to the Omokoroa Forum. And so there is the opportunity for anybody to come to the forums from anywhere within our district. So I thought that it was really worthwhile, and she was grateful to be there.
well, the thought came to mind when you had said that someone in Oauiti, is it Oauiti, that you mentioned?
I suggested to the chair of the forum that it would be sensible to hold one in Oauiti.
Yeah, so maybe we need to look in some areas about spreading ourselves around a little bit more.
Councillor Granger?
Well, I just want to point out, Madam Chair, that you called it the Omokoroa Forum. It was the Kaimai Forum held at Omokoroa. So it wasn't for Omokoroa.
Councillor Coxhead?
I know what Councillor Henry's getting at here because, and it probably really does relate mostly to the Kaimai Ward, I would probably hasten to add. It's just the geography is so vast, and you're right, I feel the same. Oropi and Ohawaiti are not well represented further along the road towards Te Puke as well over the back from Welcome Bay. That's not well serviced either in terms of the forums. And I do recall the first meeting we had here in council in the staff room, that was actually really well patronised. And I felt that being more central made more sense. Having said that though, as I recall, there were probably only a couple of participants from Oropi and one from Ohawaiti as well. So I do believe Madam Chair is correct that we probably do need to go to Ohawaiti or Oropi next time for our meeting. Given particularly when we had a quiz night thing there, I can't remember what that was about. It was what was it, some sort of consultation? And we had 100 people at the Oropi Hall, so yeah.
Thank you. So I'll get Greer to sum up now before we put the recommendation.
So I just wanted to make a summary of the actions that we've discussed in the meeting that aren't necessarily going to be recommendations, but just things that staff have committed to round out this conversation for this report. So there was the discussion around the speed cameras that Ashley's just addressed that will come back to the committee through a formal meeting as well as through correspondence via me. And then there's a suggestion from Madam Chair around Ohawaiti being the next forum location, and number 3 road, feedback to come through the Projects and Monitoring Committee in June, and the Te Puke Makatū forum notes from December to be sent out as well. And the Makatū drainage issue to come through the Community Board and then subsequently back through the Community Committee.
Thank you, Greer. Thank you, Greer. That's helpful. I'll move that that the Governance Manager's report dated 3rd of April, titled Community Forum Outcomes, be received. And it's seconded by Councillor Henry. Any discussion? We've had it. I'll put the motion in favour, will say aye. Against, carry. Now we move to empowering. Thank you, Ashley. And I'm very pleased that Rachel was able to track you down. Jody, over to you, please. Empowering communities.
Morena elected members, the next item on your agenda is a piece of work that we commissioned to primarily respond to Council's strategic priority of empowering communities. So last year, Council adopted 5 strategic priorities, one of which is empowering communities. And we wanted to undertake some work so that we can understand what kind of community-owned structures or organisations are good to have in place for communities to have the capacity and capability to deliver services at the local level and achieve community outcomes, because when Council adopted that strategic priority of empowering communities, they recognise that communities are best placed to achieve their own aspirations, but how do we really deliver against that? So one is understanding what kind of community-owned organisations are good to have in place, and then looking at how council works and how council can potentially change our systems and processes or introduce new ways of doing things to support those community-owned organisations to be successful. So that's the piece of work that we have put on the agenda for you today. It's based on 6 case studies that were undertaken of community-based organisations operating around the country. And we looked at those. There were extensive interviews undertaken with those 6 organisations to understand what makes them successful, and then to understand the kind of value that they bring to local government processes. So at this stage, what we have done is just completed that work. It's essentially, we've called it a think piece, and it is really just there to give us that good sort of grounding and good understanding of what those success factors are and what council might be able to do to support organisations like that in our own communities to be more successful. And then the next piece of work is to look at how we actually then go about looking at council systems and processes, looking at the way we work and what we might be potentially be able to do differently to support that really locally led or locally owned delivery of services and communities being able to achieve their own aspirations. So just quickly, I'll just cover off the 6 case studies were Focus Paihia, which is based in the Bay of Islands, McLaren Park Henderson South Community Trust, the Community-Led Development Trust based down on the Whanganui River, which works with all of those small river communities and along the Whanganui River. Environment Network Manawatu, which is based in Palmerston North, Te Puna Oranga or Otaki, based in Otaki, and the Paikakariki Housing Trust, based in Paikakariki, which is in Kapiti. So all of them have a different purpose to why they've been set up, but they all operate in similar ways and are delivering on their community's aspirations. So I'm happy to take any questions from you. The report itself seems like a very long report, but a big part of it is those 6 case studies that are set out there that just provide some really interesting insights into what's happening in other communities around the country as well.
Councillor Coxhead.
It's probably more of a statement and a couple of suggestions perhaps. I thoroughly enjoyed reading the case studies and went and had a look at all the websites as well, given I knew some of the trustees for the Paihia one and the work they did. And what I observed was some of them with the lower turnovers actually seemed to achieve more with manpower and probably with removal of barriers that could have been in the place had council not been more on board. So I saw that as being a major move forward. And as you say, they had such different focuses, but, you know, a couple of things that occurred to me around our own district that we perhaps have had. Things like the Avalon workshop that used to be, yeah, I was really sad when that went. That did an amazing service and, you know, obviously employed people who may not have otherwise worked, gave them a sense of purpose and, you know, self-determination is what we're talking about here. And things like, one thing I noticed too is a lot of charitables, they're getting a lot better, obviously, depending on the trustees, but a lot of them lack financial and business literacy or could do with more help in that regard. So that's probably involving other sectors of the business community in that, like, yeah, chamber, etc., business mentors and whatnot. And things like skills workshops, but practical skills that lead to employment, you know, things that probably aren't taught in schools anymore, like woodworking, metalwork, you know, basic chefing, stuff like that as well, kitchen handing, you know, just things that get people started. They're just my kind of thoughts at this point. But yeah, I really enjoyed the reports and yeah, I thought it was great having a look at what everyone else was doing.
Councillor Henry.
I think this is a very exciting and quite enlightening piece of work that's happening here, and I don't know whether other councillors are doing it, but you know, if we can get this off the ground and support our communities to support themselves, I think it's going to be a real winner. One of the background notes here, number 8, in order to effectively empower communities, we need to first understand what kind of community-owned structures. So is this extending, can you explain what that is in the support that's around, might be, are we looking at structures or, you know, what's your vision about that statement?
Yeah, so essentially what it was when I say structures, it was just a term to use to cover trusts or anchor organisations or entities that are operating, and just understanding how they're working to deliver on their community aspirations. Yeah,
because indeed it may be structures too in some point. I'm imagining that there's going to be all sorts of organisations that are going to want to come on board. We're already doing one with the circular economy waste minimisation. So just thinking that's about a 6 months trial, but could be, if it went on, a 2-year thing with support from council. How if we get a lot of interest, how are we looking to support the initial startup stages if we get a lot?
Yes, through you, Madam Chair. I think that in our communities we already have a lot of these organisations already operating. I think it's really important to note, and I did set this out in the report, that not every organisation is a community anchor organisation. So those ones that have that more kind of overarching or strategic view in their communities are ones that are multi-purpose, community-led, take on a range of role and functions in and for the community, and really have a very collaborative way of working. So they do some of the doing, but they also bring parties together to achieve things. So I think those are the organisations that we're sort of not necessarily, we're not trying to pick winners and say this is the organisation or that's the organisation, but just understanding how we might be able to change how we operate to support those where they do exist in communities.
So in the interim, maybe in the first couple of years or 3 years when you're rolling out, the majority of the support will be what you're already doing in the community, is supporting people and talking with them and pointing them in the right direction.
Yes, yeah. Yes, yeah, that's right.
Mayor Denyer?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think this is more of a comment, but perhaps I'd welcome your views and observations on this. Because it seems from the report that it's really fun, and from my experience as well, it seems really fundamental that is that we need to value, encourage and support people in the community who have the motivation and skills to do the work that these groups do. But having said that, longevity is a problem. And when the key people leave, things tend to fall over. And it's difficult to start such groups without those people raring to go or initiating it. And it's hard to maintain that after they go for whatever reason. So we may just need to recognise that these projects have a natural life cycle, and council's role should be to support those, but not necessarily keep them on life support past their elbow date, because it just doesn't work like that in my experience. But I don't know if you have any observations on that.
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair. I think what we were really trying to understand is how do these organisations that have, the ones that were the case studies, they have been successful and have had more of that sustainability and longevity to them. And there's a few different things that they've done to achieve that. So one is Focus Pie here, for example. They own their own building. They run a second-hand store as part of that. So they have a revenue generation component to what they do, which then enables them to maintain their service delivery. They also have contracts from council, and one of the contracts that they have in Pie here is that they manage the town maintenance contracts. So that contract sits with Focus Pi here and obviously creates a revenue generation stream for them. As Councillor Cox here pointed out, they actually do it on really low, they have really low internal overheads. I think they only have one FTE, one full-time staff member who manages all of that, and the rest is volunteer support. So that's where we're really trying to understand is how do we get that sustainability and that ongoing success and sustainability for those organisations? Because, you know, if you're really talking about trying to make addressing social problems and addressing those from the community level, that is a 10, 20-year time frame to really get those changes in place. It's not a 3-year, 5-year. It's not a 3-year to 5-year exercise. It's a long-term thing. So what does council need to do to understand that first and foremost, and then look at the ways that we work and the ways we fund and the way we structure our services that could support that sustainability. It's really what we're trying to get to the bottom of, I think. Yeah. Which we haven't done yet. We've only done the think piece. So.
I would also add that even I wouldn't suggest using an asset as the basis for the longevity. We see what happens when hall committees, you know, if they lose some key people there, they can go into abeyance. They just cannot function sometimes, and to suggest that a multi-million-dollar hall creates that longevity is certainly not necessarily true. It may help a little bit, but it can create more problems than it's only you have a big asset that no one's looking after. And so I think we just need to be a little bit careful about how that, and maybe just recognise that longevity is great, but it can't necessarily force it. And you just got to wait for the right people to come along and lead these things.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. Yes. Yeah.
Under the previous community committee, we had Ben Wilson was able to find funding for renting a house in Katikati, which was close to the school, and we had Sue Tutaki and Sean, Kingy, and they were the Maori wardens who were in that house and encouraging the children to get in and stay in school. The local Rotary Club provided them with laptops, and they could work in the house before they went home. They had showers there, and they could even make sure that any child that needed support had it. And that was really a wonderful program, except the lady who owned the house sold it. So we lost that one, and it has never been able to be re-established. And so the Mayor is right, people sort of come and go in leadership roles, and so it's how to keep them going. Now we've got Murray, Councillor Granger.
Madam Chair, questions through you to Jodie. I'm just wondering, normally we receive reports or accept reports, acknowledge reports. Is there a council speak reason for the word endorse in this particular recommendation 3? It's a much stronger word. I just wondered, is there a reason that word was used?
Yes, there is a reason that was used, Councillor Granger. So essentially, Council has adopted a strategic priority that is empowering communities, and when that strategic priority is adopted, as with all of them, I think that there is an onus on Council and on staff to be deliberate about how we are then delivering on that strategic priority. So we are wanting to, I guess, have this piece of work endorsed as a foundation document that we as staff will then use to workshop with the community committee, how we then structure our practices or what changes or system changes we can make within council to deliver on that work. So we are really asking for it to be endorsed as opposed to just received, because we do want it to be, I guess, recognised as a key foundational input into the next stages of delivering on that strategic priority. So yes, it is a very deliberate choice there.
I've got John Clements.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Katikati's been very fortunate with and I would imagine Te Puke is similar, with a deep history and in fact a number of voluntary organisations, Lions, Rotary, the Community Centre, and that in a way helps them with networking. So this really can fit into that kind of framework as well. One of the challenge I notice, and James has alluded to this, is the idea of volunteers and leadership that comes and goes. And in fact, when I look at the leadership profile that sits in most of those organizations, they have grey hair. And therefore, and there's not the young people underneath it. And in fact, the next report we are looking at, there's a middle band missing of middle managers who are going to take those leadership roles up going forward 10, 15 years from now. Let me just dig into my, the other thing I noticed about that is that in fact they're all silos. And we need to think about how do we manage the silos. When I look at for example, around employment and career paths and that type of thing, they're all working in silos, yet within Kerikeri we have employers, but they're separate, they're seen as separate to these community organizations. My experience with working with German industry is that they look at employment within industry sectors, and we can look at it regional sectors, where they become partners in creating employment for these youth. And they then acquire skills, whether it be forklift drivers, operators, whatever it is, and that becomes the foundation for them to have career paths. So rather than seeing it as siloed organizations, we have to start to think about how we integrate those organizations, because the power of the integration within the community has been when the employers are taking these people and in fact providing them with careers and are starting up with their lives. Was that part of the study or not?
Through you, Madam Chair, I think within some of the case study, and you're exactly right, Chair Clements, it is about the integration of the four wellbeings, so social, economic, cultural and environmental, and that is absolutely fundamental to how these organisations are working. And I think that's really important, that often the siloed thinking comes around the wellbeing. So there's the focus on social or environmental or economic, but not in an integrated, that they're often not integrated. I think what the community anchor organisations do is try and bring some of those things together. So there are some in here that are quite specific in their focus, and Environment Network Manawatu would possibly be one of those, but it recognises that they also provide a lot of social connection and social wellbeing and potentially economic avenues within that as well. So the role of the business sector and business communities in these anchor organisations is really important. And I think that's part of what we'll need to sort of understand in those next stages, is how that's happening. It's a critical aspect of it.
One of the things I thought when I was reading the report, and it was interesting, is that we do have groups out there in the community, like our community boards and like our hall committees, and they are key people for our communities, and they keep the community alive. And I would have loved this to go to those groups to actually get their feedback before we actually endorse it. But I'd like to hear from a member Ray or member Cassie as to what their views are for their community boards, and whether they think it would be sensible for this report to go to their community boards. And you too, Member Gowdy.
I go first. All right. I would like to see it go to the committee board and the hall committee and various ratepayers and other, like the surf club, the boating club. They all have a part to play in our communities. It is sometimes quite hard to integrate them all in. We are attempting to do that through Live Well Waihi Beach, of getting representatives from all those organisations to talk in the room at the same time, so we know what they're doing and they know what other parts of the community are doing. Now, that's part, I believe, what the community board could do. I endeavour to do that and involve as many community organisations as possible. Doesn't mean that you break down the silos instantly, but you eventually get to the stage where people do know what's going on in their communities. And I'm just looking at some of the parts. developing services, local contracts for services, and just wondering, do they have to be a trust in their own right? Do they have to show a proven record? If you're starting off with some group that's enthusiastic but hasn't got any track record, well, they have to prove themselves somewhere along the line. So I'd like to delve into more into this. I know that the Hall Committee itself is run on volunteers, not paid anything, and they do a tremendous amount of job, but they're all getting grey-haired, and they're looking for the younger generation to come on. Now, part of this could be, how do you get the younger generation, as of below 60, 65 or 70, to actually volunteer to step up and be part of a community group? Now, most of them will say, I haven't got time, we haven't got time to volunteer, and we're not getting paid anything. Now, maybe there's a course in administration of small organisations, and they get paid to actually do that at a minimum wage act thing, so that they actually see that they have to stump up and be equipped to run an organisation. So that's possibly where I'm coming from, is that organisations have to have some chain of carry on, and if we can't get them volunteering, they may have to do a course to be administratively competent, because some of them aren't. Thank you.
Member Ray.
Yes, so I do see this piece as being beneficial to come to the board. We actually have a couple of examples of quite successful, collaborations, you might say. One of them, what used to be called the Makatu Projects team, and that was basically all of our local volunteer organisations. They just had one or two representatives. They would come together in a meeting, possibly 3 monthly, and just discuss anything or any projects that they had for the community. And you would then have us there who could possibly assist with that financially or the like. But there's also a new one, because that one's kind of fallen by the waist, because it comes down to time and availability of people these days, that they just unfortunately have to make money instead of volunteering. But our community day in Maketu, that's on the 20th of April, would be a really good one, because my idea of it is we showcase all the organisations we already have, but it's like Ross said, it's about pulling the young people, because as one of the young people for our community, one of the only ones, I struggle with how to bring these people to want to care about it. I know that they care about it, but it's a hard one. There's a lot of other things that they have to do in life, and there's a lot of other things they probably want to do instead of that. But we got to bring, like our local fire brigade, for example, our surf club, and bring them, get those members to canvass new young people. And that's basically the whole idea of our day. But all of this stuff in the report would be valuable to come to the community.
Okay, my turn. Yeah, sorry. So I can obviously see merit in this coming to the community board, because we're also in a position that we can potentially influence. In saying that, it's very hard to engage with youth at that level where they're just almost past high school and in that sort of 18 to 24 bracket, because we need incentives to be able to entice somebody to do that, and that's unfortunately at the moment financially. And volunteering isn't exactly everybody's sort of cup of tea, really. And I personally believe, though, in terms of the demographics that we've got in Te Puke at the moment, and I can say this because Richard was a keen advocate for this, it took us probably 6 years and we haven't even got there to have a youth representative on our community board. And it's something that we all felt we'll probably still do that's quite necessary, but it comes back to the incentive and time. And if we look at the organisations in Te Puke where potentially that age bracket are engaging, it's predominantly faith-based, which is not a bad thing, or in a group where there's a, how do I word this? There's something, there could potentially be volunteering, but there's something at the end of that, like more work outside of potentially council roles or something like that. But incentives, I do mean financial or administrative courses and something that's a little bit more substantial for a career. Yeah, that's kind of where I'm coming from. But if this document comes to the community board, I'm happy for us to advocate for this in the best way possible. But then if we also look at the track record of who's applied for community boards and council, we're at, and I'm proud of that, but I'm also like, that's awful.
Thank you, Member Ellis. Well done. Member Clements, I'm asking the community board chairs first as to whether they think it's worthwhile for this to go to their community boards so they can see how they need to, what they need to do, what they need to actually extend their involvement of their communities. So, Member Clements.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I do think it should come before the community board. When I look though at what I'm where I would see in terms of integration, I think it's more of a workshop nature than in fact a community board item nature. And that is that we have a special workshop in which we invite employers, some of the leading community organisations, Catch Kerikeri Community Centre, Lions, Rotary, and we talk to them about a strategy going forward for our local community to address those needs. The advantage of having employers involved is they have longevity. They have it because they've been there for 30, 40 years. So, and they have continuity of management. They have employees who can engage, and it's getting them on board to help us address it. I mean, Lions has been there for 20, 30 years. So there's organizations that have longevity, and we need to try and bring them to help that continuity through a workshop and then through a strategy for the community. So to take this report and say, what does it mean for our community? They must own it in a sense, and they must then put the chair and the structure around that, realizing that if they can, they're potential employees that they're looking at for the future or engagement within that community to make it a healthier community. Right, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sol.
This one's working for me.
Rightio, here we go again.
Third time lucky.
Oh, look at that. Okay, take it back, John. Oh.
Microphones.
First you say yes, then you say no. Okay. Madam Chair, I look at this and it's a really good program. The basic idea, I think, is really important for communities. And I see it already operating like in Waihi Beach. The former community board started to do Live Well and it's sort of expanded. So I can see that. I look at these examples and they're really good. But I've also done more research on some of these cases myself. And I basically see them as being great, okay? The issue is, I just feel it's interesting because we're talking community committee, involving communities, and I just feel that we haven't actually, and nowhere do we actually refer to our community boards. And I feel that this report should have been able to go to the community boards for them to I guess, familiarise themselves with what potentially is coming from council. They're part of our council. And the first they virtually know of it is they walk in here, and there's at least 15 of them that don't have the opportunity to go through this at this point. So that's sort of where I find it a little difficult, that we just seem to have skipped a bit of a step. But I understand that you wish to come out with more on how it may operate, and I can see that being the case. But to me, it just seems to have moved that way. I also must actually endorse the comments of the Mayor, because it's been an issue in some places where things do fall over. We see it all the time. Council hates people that want to build a garden somewhere in roadsides, because guess what? Somebody goes away, somebody dies, can't do it. All of a sudden, council's faced with either maintaining it or mowing it, and either way, we lose. So, you know, all those things. And I do look, in Katikati, we had I think, probably quite a big issue with an organisation that was doing a lot of this sort of work, and it ain't here now. And it's only been fairly recently that it went, and it was big news, rah, 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 crash. So you will never stop that from happening. It's part of trust and so on. You're going to and work with people. So to me, I just feel this needs to go to community boards to be able to workshop through themselves as part of our council process. In other words, from community up, not us going down. I just feel that's important.
Oh, just sort of a couple of things. One was maybe looking at the Paihia example. What I kind of gleaned from that was there actually was a bit of a whole community focus there, and it was probably a community that was focused on an outcome of keeping it beautiful or whatever. Maybe they didn't see that it was getting the attention it needed. So, but one thing I would say about Paihia is a lot of people move there who are semi-retired at a younger age, probably late 40s, thereabouts, and probably of reasonable means as well. So that's probably why that works so well there. But I was actually just Googling Dave Latally, for example, in terms of engaging youth in charity work in the future. So you look at Butterbean and what the work he's done with his motivational courses for children, young people. And the work, there's another guy, I can't remember his name, he was a boxing legend, and he ended up running, I think it was in Taita in Wellington. He took in all these kids that and got them into boxing, for example. And I think this is how young people end up being involved themselves in helping others down the track, maybe not immediately, but a little bit further down the track as well, because someone's given them a bit of a hand up and made them see, well, help them see something differently, help them see their future differently. And I think that's probably where that kind of real engagement from youth does come.
Thank you, Tracy. I now have Ross Gowdy. Right. We now have Rodney Joyce.
Thanks. It's a fascinating conversation, and the power of these organisations is very real. They can reach corners that the council can't reach, have multiplier effects on the funding, the help that they get. And there are lots of interesting points today, and I didn't want to go over the same ground. But I did note page 37 of the agenda, page 19 of the report, the recommendation is that council staff go away and work on this. A few risks for local anchor organisations and partnering with councils is something that should obviously be part of that, because there's some themes that come through on how to deal with council and the problems of dealing with council. Some of that is creative tension. If you're a funder, you want accountability. If you're out there doing it, you don't want to worry about bureaucracy. So I'm not saying that these things are easy to resolve, but I would hope that we look at our local organisations as well. I think it'd be fascinating to get the community boards involved. I mean, legislatively, they have the job of being the overview of their local communities with council. So I'd commend involvement of community boards along with staff, along with community organisations to progress this.
Thank you, Rodney. Mayor James.
Yeah, thank you. Well, picking up on some of the comments, I just I foreshadow, if I'm going to put it formally, but suggest that when the time comes, recommendation 4 could be changed to the council notes staff are preparing an implementation plan for the strategic priority of empowering communities, setting out what council will do to deliver on this priority and how it will monitor progress. This work we brought back to the community committee in due course, and then the new bit after engaging with community boards, community groups and other stakeholders. Because I think as our strategic priority, we want to endorse this report, but in how that gets implemented, we want to involve the local community groups and others about how we do that. I think this is our strategic priority. I don't think we need to relitigate that, and that's the danger if you go back bottom up, but there is certainly value in talking to groups before the implementation plan is evaluated. And I suspect Jodie was probably going to do it anyway, but it would be good to maybe make that explicit.
Thank you, Mayor James. I'm happy to second that motion. Well, we're ready. We'll have the debate on it. Jodie, you're capable of working with those community groups and making sure that they come back to us as soon as possible with the recommendations of how they see extending themselves further into the community. That Nicola James I referred to, new chair of the Cora group up in Kaimai, is having a meeting, public meeting on tomorrow night, and that's a wonderful thing to go on her agenda to actually, because it gives her a reason for being, to extend out. And you've got Lorraine Wennick and Debbie Marshall who've been on the Kaimai Hall for years, and they know their communities well, as I'm sure all other communities know their people well, and they're really an opportunity to extend your report as to how they can involve the community to a greater extent, and then come back here.
So through you, Madam Chair, I just want to really reiterate for the elected members and community board chairs that one of the critical aspects of doing this think piece is understanding internally council's structures, systems and processes and how they operate to either empower or not in the current way that we work, and what changes we may need to make to the way that we work. So the first step, of course, is for elected members and chairs to endorse the think piece, because that's our strategic priority. So we want to understand how we then move forward with that. We need to have a whole series of internal workshops with staff to understand how we are currently operating, where some of the things might be able to shift or change that can really empower communities. So this is really a piece of work that drives that internal thinking as well. So we've got a whole lot of work we need to do there. And then our approach is that we're wanting to bring that back to the community committee as a workshop, first and foremost, because this is your strategic priority that's owned by this community committee, to then workshop and understand what we might then take out to community boards and the community to say, here's some things we're thinking about with the way that we work and what we might be able to do differently. Will these things work with these communities? It's not, our communities already are very strong. They have really good networks in place. We're not sort of, it's really how we work and what we're doing and what changes we might make. That's what we need to explore further. So I think just in terms of that, there is a real process that we need to go through around how we engage on this and when we're engaging at the right point. So when councils is ready to sort of say, here's some ideas about how we could do things differently, that's when we can go to those community organisations and say, does this work or not?
Will that include road safety, for example? We had a good committee and the previous mayor wiped it, sent it up to the regional council, and it just goes into the bottom drawer. And that was community road safety. Do you look at things like that, Jodie? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I mean, through you, Madam Chair, I cannot speak on behalf of our infrastructure team. If I had my way, all of that would be community-led and community-driven, but I obviously can't commit to that, which is why I'm saying we need all of the internal internal work done first, and understanding how, as an organisation, we might respond to some of those things.
So what you're not saying is that it's not that you don't want it to go to the boards or the hall committees. You're asking that staff take a look at it first and then come back to the committee and then we go out. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. And engaging on the right things when we do go out as well, because I don't want to end up going to a community organisation and saying, what do you think? If council is not prepared to go there, because then you're just creating we need to be clear on where council is prepared to make those changes and what we want to work on before we go to the community with those things. Because if we went and said, do you want to do this? And they say yes, and then we say no, that creates a whole other level of challenge.
Right. So, Mayor James, we just sort of alter that just a little?
I think that Jodie's covered it quite well, and I agree that if you create that false expectation, that's not a great look for anyone. And but with the thorough understanding that in due course it goes out to those groups, community boards, community groups, stakeholders, maybe employers, whatever, and that they get involved at that point. Yeah.
So we just need to alter item 4 to say, come back to the community committee in due course, and then consultation with our community groups. Engagement with community boards, hall committees, etc. Okay? Yes. Councillor, Member Gowdy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I hear what Jodie has to say. Yes, you've got to get your processes in line for a start, but I think somewhere along the line, before it goes out, it might be helpful for you and staff involved to actually talk to the community organisations that are already out there doing a good job in our things, and you know well what they are, as how do you see this working? Thank you.
Got Councillor Daly.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity to comment on this report. I certainly agree with what I'm hearing around the table. Mayor James' commentary about volunteers and also John, how time moves on and people fall off the radar. I've attended quite a few think tanks. The first one being Inspiring Communities back in 2011, I think. Judy, Kathy Webb pulled them in when she was working for council, and the whole concept and idea of community-led hasn't really changed much. It's just really the council, I guess, as a facilitator, catching up is certainly something that I fully agree with. The idea that organisations sort of run their course is also something that can be kaupapa driven. You achieve your goal and then there's no reason for that organisation to exist anymore. So I think when we set up the Te Ara Kikiti Pathway Society in 2012, Julian Fitter was our chairman. We invited him into the room, and he became our first chairman. And he was always very strong on these sort of things and making sustainable organisations. And he was adamant that you can't rely on volunteers. You need to pay some people to do the mahi, and I think actually my first community committee meeting was at Pukahina in the community hall that the Ratepayers Association are working so hard to get back up to speed for community use. And Julian came along with 2 other people, I think, one of the guys from Karikari and another guy from somewhere else, both from environmental organisations, and they were presented the concept of Bay Conservation Alliance, and I think didn't really meet with a very good response from council, to be honest, but they pursued the concept, and I think we're probably all aware of how that's progressed and how strong that organisation is, and everything that's been talked about in terms of empowering volunteers or even training volunteers or recruiting volunteers is something that's been addressed by Bay Conservation Alliance very well. And so even though some people think Julian's a bit out in left field, you know, he's actually bang on point, I think.
Thank you, Councillor Daly.
And if I can just continue a little bit longer, we do have some
quick.
very good, robust organisations in our communities. The one that maybe wasn't mentioned, but Omakaro Environmental Managers Incorporated, Murray's well associated with that, and put in some pretty good groundwork there as well. But in terms of council being a facilitator and an enabler, and the whole idea of moving to social procurement for council contracts, all fits under this umbrella. And you know, Richard, obviously Cassie mentioned he was well down the track on setting up organisations in Te Puke along these lines, and Karen Summerhayes, if you go and read our submission to the last long-term plan, she was banging on exactly about what we're talking about now, and you know, I see there's a really good place for council community boards as oversight facilitators, prompters, prodders, to keep these organisations running effectively and efficiently, keep them on their toes, but also devolve some of these contracts for some of these jobs around town that, you know, contractors just go and tick the box, but a local organisation will actually put a bit of heart and soul into the project and make a difference.
So you're actually anticipating what Jody might report to us, and so it's over to you, Jody. The last speaker, Councillor Henry.
Because I want to move the 4 points with the amended points. So can we didn't vote on that one.
No, we've got that moved by Vince, seconded by me, so it's just, we're just debating it now. So you in favour of it or not?
Yes, I am in favour of it. I'm waiting to move this along and move the 4 points with the amendment when it's done.
But that's what you've...
Yeah, I think you don't have to move an amendment. I've moved a recommendation which is not written down here, but you can do that. It doesn't need to be amended again. So it's, I think we're on the same page, I think.
Pardon?
Okay. I've moved what I think you want to see happen anyway.
Yeah, so we're going to have that in there. We're going to have that in point 4.
Yeah.
Well, in that case, you don't have to agree, then I would move the 4 points be approved.
We've done that, Anne. That's where we're at.
You just moved the change for point 4.
No, included the first 4
Oh, I didn't.
plus the
I didn't think it was
slight
just
amendment.
Just thought it was round point 4.
Right. I'll put the motion. In favour will say aye. Against, carried.
Oh, thank you. Morning tea.
Thank you.
Oh, no.
A very good time to take a cup of coffee. And we'll be back here at 11:05. We're on page 89 of your agenda, and Councillor Granger has kindly advised me to leave my light on, so instead of bouncing my finger up and down at the wrong time. Thanks, Murray. Jody, it's over to you.
So the next agenda item we have, I think, will be dear to some of your hearts, given the conversation that we just had around empowering communities and how we engage with youth. So this is a piece of work that we've had done to just really understand from the numbers, so essentially from Stats New Zealand data, what the youth profile of the Western Bay is, and then to update you on some of the things we're doing in terms of our climate change program to engage with youth. So I'll just start by introducing two members of the Community and Strategic Relationships team that you may not have met yet. I'll just get them to introduce themselves first.
Hi, I'm Jacob. I've been with Council since January last year, and my role is the Corporate Energy and Carbon Analyst.
Jacob who?
Everett, Jacob Everett.
Thanks, Jacob.
Hi, I've met a few of you already. I'm Meg Wakefield. I'm the Climate Change Program Lead. I've been with Council for a little over 3 years, and this is my second role. Moved into it September 2022.
Thank you. So are you leading this one, Jody?
So I'm going to lead this with Jacob and Megan. So I'll just hand over to Jacob just to run through for you quickly some of the highlights from the youth program, and then Jacob and me can run through some of the actions that are currently underway.
Good.
So through the youth profile, we gained some valuable insights into demographics of 15 to 24-year-olds in the Western Bay. We found that young people are a relatively diverse segment of the population, and that there are relatively more young people in the workforce in the Western Bay than in New Zealand, the national average that is. And we also found that relatively more young Western Bay residents work or study at home than the national average, and young Western Bay residents tend to use less active modes of transport than the national average. Additionally, insights from ECA have found that more young New Zealanders are especially interested and concerned with climate change and want to take more action. And all of these insights will inform our engagement with youth in climate change action. And along those lines, I'd like to pass it over to Meg, who will speak about the Impact Challenge.
Can you tell me, Jacob, did you include in your work with young people the work that Council is doing already?
So through you, Madam Chair, part of what we've set out in this report that Meg's just going to speak to is some of the work that we're doing already with youth. I think it's pretty exciting stuff, so for her to explain it to you, I think you'll find it really interesting.
Right.
Great. So one of the first opportunities that we've picked up on as a result of the findings from the youth profile is partnering with Tauranga City Council and Bay Plenty Regional Council on a sub-regional version of the Impact Challenge. The Impact Challenge is a national program run by Inspiring Stories, which is a charity, and it is targeted at enabling young people to lead climate action within their communities. The program basically runs as allowing young people to apply for a microgrant, which they can then use to scope out a project with the people in their community. And it needs to be focused on exploring solutions to enhance community resilience. And so once they have developed their idea, they can apply for a larger grant to actually bring it to life within their community, and so see the project from start to finish. We have essentially partnered with our other councils to get Inspiring Stories to run this on a sub-regional level alongside the national program, so providing more opportunity for the youth in our district to lead climate action. There's a number of objectives that this initiative is going to achieve. We'll be empowering and supporting rangatahi to learn more about what climate change would mean for their community, to improve the communication and understanding with council on what their concerns are, developing their capacity for leadership, sort of skills development. And we're also hoping to create a platform for ongoing engagement with rangatahi on this, on climate change as a topic. and again, finding out more about what kind of development opportunities they're interested in and which council can help to provide. The project is currently in its early stages, just establishment and recruiting participants, and it will run through until October of this year, with the participants that are selected also attending the Festival for the Future in July, which will help them with developing their ideas into a fully formed idea that they can apply for the grant, which I think is $3,000. Yeah, so up to $3,000 to actually bring their idea to life.
Tell me, why climate change? Why educating young people only on climate change?
The basis of that is because that is the program that Inspiring Stories already delivers through the National Impact Challenge. It is very much focused on having development of young people to lead their communities through future impacts on their communities from climate change. And yeah, big focus on resilience.
How do you think it'll help the people of Waihi Beach who've been had to cope with flooding, for example? What role do you see young people having in somewhere where the climate is really changing in our own backyard?
I think for somewhere like Waihi Beach, the biggest value add for this program is allowing young people to actually take part in the future of their community and actually helping to develop plans and giving them a sense of ownership. A major issue for young people in not just Waihi Beach, but New Zealand in general, is climate anxiety. So giving them some ownership over that process and actually being able to understand the process for making change is going to be really valuable, not just in the near term, but going forward into the future once they become decision makers.
Yes, right. Any speakers? Yes, sir.
Just in regard to the data tables that are in the report, some of it doesn't make sense. So like a classic on page 128 gives a column of New Zealand superannuants or veterans who are on pension, 15 to 29-year-olds. It lists that, you know, we're up to 34% of the youth in that age group in Waihi Beach and Bowen Town are on the pension or veterans.
Yeah, so all this data is directly from Stats NZ, from taken from the 2018 census. Yeah, some of the data is a bit confusing, but again, it's directly coming from Stats NZ.
So you didn't think to check it, Jacob?
Let's go easy on the guy. I'm just pretty much every table that's got multiple columns, and when you add the percentages, they are very often above 100%.
So in those cases, that's when there are multiple selections available.
Yeah.
And that's why, particularly in some cases, yeah, the total is not given at the bottom because there are multiple selections for the inputs.
Councillor Granger? Thanks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It bothers me that we're doing anything in the fastest growing region of the country on 6-year-old data. So it may be the latest that we've got available to us, but it still doesn't mean to say that we should use it. So can we have some assurance that we'll get up-to-date data from the 2023 census before we make decisions on things? Because we know the growth is happening here and we're working on 6-year-old information. It seems a bit silly.
Right, Jodie.
Yes, just to respond to that, Madam Chair, I think we can only work off the data that's available to us, which is at the moment Census 2018. So that is the most up-to-date data that we have to use. I think the critical factor is this gives like numbers and breakdowns and things like that, but what we're trying to look at is what is the picture that the data creates. So it doesn't matter too much what the actual numbers are, it's the picture that it shows for the youth profile in the Western Bay, and those are the insights that Jacob has sort of pulled out from the data. Now, when we come to the 2023 census, of course, we'll go back and have a look at that. I don't think that picture is going to have shifted too much. The numbers will change, but the picture that it's showing of our youth and their kind of makeup, I imagine that that will be roughly the same. So I think it's just really important to understand that, at a staff level, none of us are statisticians. We can only work from the data that's available to us, and we've used the best available data that we have.
Are you saying, Councillor Granger, it doesn't make sense to you?
No, I'm just saying that the picture that we're drawing from this may not be the correct picture for now. It's 6-year-old data.
Right. Jacob?
Yeah, just to add to that, yeah, it's good to use that as some initial context. But as we go out to community and speak with youth, we can look to understand if there are any discrepancies between the data and what's actually going on in the community. So, yeah, ultimately we just want to understand, yeah, what's going on and if there are any discrepancies between the data and what's actually going on in the community.
I felt that on page 92, where you've got young people becoming ambassadors for heating, just didn't make sense to me. And at the back of these insights, staff are exploring a potential opportunity to appoint local youth as cleaning heating ambassadors. How on earth will that work?
Through you, Madam Chair, I think if we just finish covering off the other aspects that are in the report, and then I can give an overview of exactly how that initiative may work, but it is just a work in progress at this stage. I just want to highlight that for everybody.
Right. Member Gowdy.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I read this report with a great deal of interest. There is a place that young people influence their adults in their lives. We've seen it in Waihi Beach in Predator Free, where the school has got in behind Predator Free, the Otawhiwhi Marae has got in behind Predator Free, and it is educating the adults. And because they're coming up, they then have a grounding in what Predator Free is. And this could be a good place for talking about climate change. Now, you don't have very much problem about I should say, I'll go back. 10 years ago, no one in Waihi Beach would talk about climate change because they didn't want to know about it. They do now. You can talk about very freely about climate change and the implications of. And to a large amount of Waihi Beach people, climate change is their number one priority. And what can they do? And if nothing else, this will lead to pathways to understanding what would happen if A, B or C happened. That would be our greatest thing, that young people are involved in the discussion about, in whether it be 20 years or 50 years, if certain things happen, we've got a plan for it. At the moment, we haven't got a plan for it. And that would be how I would approach it, and I would go through the school for a start to get that story through, and then they influence their parents, and their parents become involved in understanding and the opportunities or not, or the options they have if something or other does happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Henry.
Well, it's not new to us about the educational merits of our youth. That's clearly indicated in here, and our multicultural community have higher qualifications than our youth that grew up here or born here. Am I correct? And that's how I've read the report. Educational qualifications. Yeah, they're lower here. So, and we talked before about engagement in one's community, and a lot of the children that would have been picked up in the census that you're reporting on would have gone through the COVID years, and we know, well, I'm from an educational base, that children did in the senior years did disengage from their learning. So I think that, pardon?
No, sorry.
That I think that to look at opportunities to engage them in what is happening within our communities and indeed within our world is actually a really good way of engaging them back into something that is other than the internalisation that they have probably experienced through those years that they've gone through in education, which none of us had gone through in those years where we're invited, what we're working for is what we're going to be aspiring to. They didn't have that. So I think that's really a very good thing that we're looking at in Western Bay. And the statistics prove that we actually need to do something about it.
Thank you. John Clements?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I can understand why Murray's sensitive, Councillor Granger's sensitive to the 6-year-old data, because in fact Aomakarau's got the oldest age profile, which was a surprise to me. So yes, I understand yourself. And that was actually very useful information because in fact Aomakarau came out with the highest age, and then in fact Waihi Beach, and in fact then Kerikeri. I'm not sure that data is correct because I think Kerikeri has got a high age profile. But the other one is that in terms of, one of my concerns is, will these climate ambassadors and these microgrants compound climate anxiety or reduce it? Because here we are getting advocates talking about climate change, but my fairly reasonable amount of reading is indicating that in fact what's being taught is not the whole picture regarding climate change. And in fact, climate change has occurred over millennia, not just the last 20 or 30 years. So we need to be sure that we don't compound the problem of climate anxiety when we actually do this. The other one is I'd like to just think about wearing my economic hat and saying, with these micro grants, can we think about putting a bias on it towards youth thinking of micro businesses? I mean, micro funding and micro business have been very successful in certain parts of the world. And therefore we teach people to look at environmental businesses that prepare them well for the future. And this goes back to the other presentation we had just before. So we use it in a very productive way to grow young entrepreneurship using those micro grants as a platform for thinking about how to run a small business. So there you are, there's a suggestion.
Thank you. Now, Jody, I'd like you to speak to the report, please, and tell us where the money comes from and how it's going to be set aside and who benefits from it.
So through you, Madam Chair, is it appropriate just to finish off the other topics that are in the report? And then we'll come back to the matters that have been raised through the discussion. So I'll just hand over to Jacob and he can explain a little bit about something that he's involved in that as exactly the young person that everybody is discussing. Jacob is that young person, and this is part of his role at council.
So I'd like to speak on a capacity building program that I'm a part of. The Max Thabiso Edkins Climate Ambassador Program is a global online capacity building program that I'm a part of, where young professionals, entrepreneurs and students come together to gain knowledge and skills to support climate action in their communities. Knowledge and skills is gained through online webinars with World Bank Group partners and subject matter experts. And it's a really great opportunity for me to learn more and then share that knowledge within the community, specifically when it comes to climate change communication, as well as innovative initiatives. Yes.
Thanks, Jacob. I think that the last point there that Jacob made is really important as well, is that, just to address, I know I just said I'll wait till the end, but just to address Councillor Granger's point around, Chairperson Clement's point around climate anxiety. These things are structured around climate action. So this is empowering young people to actually be able to take some actions in their communities to address the concerns that they see in the world. So it is about upskilling and capacity building. But it is very much about taking those small little actions that you can take on the ground in your community to make a difference. Not a huge difference, just a micro difference, but to be able to make a difference. And I think for all people, but in particular for young people, that is really empowering as opposed to disempowering and building further anxiety. So that's really what the focus of the Impact Challenge is. Councillor Denyer attended the Festival for the Future last year, as did Jacob, and really saw what that energy looks like that's coming from those people aged between sort of, 14 and 24 years of age. Really inspiring stuff at that level, and just that real desire to lead and real desire to take action. So this program is how we, on a really small scale, are responding and supporting that. I'll just let me quickly cover off as well on the Climate Action Festival, which is the last sort of action that we're looking at.
Yeah, so the last opportunity that we're working on at the moment is the Climate Action Festival. Some of you will have seen the program from last September, which was the very first one that we had in the sub-region. The festival is loosely based on the premise of the one held in Auckland. However, that's across an entire month because they've got a ton of resource to throw at it. So essentially, it's just a week-long celebration of the climate action that's already happening in our communities. Last year, it was a collaborative effort between Tauranga City Council, ourselves, Bay Plenty Regional Council, Te Whatu Ora, Priority One and Becca, and we pulled in the help of EnviroHub to actually coordinate and deliver quite a lot of it. It was identified after that very first festival that there was a notable lack of youth involvement in some of the events. So one of the opportunities that we're working on is actually bringing a rangatahi lens into this year's event. We will be doing that by partnering with the University of Waikato, who already run an elective paper called the Impact Lab, and the objectives of that paper are strongly aligned with the delivery of an event such as the Climate Festival. So a group has been identified that are taking part in the first trimester paper. They will be assisting us by researching, analysing and evaluating the 2023 festival, and then assisting EnviroHub with the early stages of planning for this year's festival, which will again be held in September. Because it's only a half-year paper, they will be wrapping up in about May. But the idea is that a second cohort in trimester B will be picking up on the recommendations made by the 6 students that are currently taking part, and then actually bringing it to life through the event, and hopefully assisting with the actual delivery and improving youth engagement with the festival and the process.
So you've been doing quite a bit of work already, but this is the first time you've actually had to report back to us.
Yes, well, because this is a collaborative event with the other councils, and we have just been sort of trialling it so far to see how it goes. We don't exactly know how the youth engagement aspect will work so far, but we do know that we needed to change what we had in the first year's offering in order to at least have a hope of attracting a little bit more interest.
So tell me, which ministry does this come under? And what is the funding base for?
So the funding that we're putting towards this is just coming out of our standard funding that we provide to EnviroHub to deliver events throughout the year. We're not partnering with any of the ministries or applying for any external funding. The majority of the events and presenters are there on a voluntary basis. There's quite a lot of small, medium-sized businesses that are involved in the festival. And it's an opportunity for them to promote the great things that they're doing as well.
If we're expecting young people to go and knock on people's doors, and surely they should actually be paid for it, does that come out of our budget as well?
By our people, do you mean council staff or?
No, well, you talk here about the heating thing. Insight staff are exploring potential opportunity to appoint heating sources, local youth as clean heating ambassadors.
Okay, so,
So I can speak to that initiative. So essentially, as Jacob's work identified, the heat sources that are used in the Western Bay are not particularly energy efficient. It is an area where we are using less energy efficient heating sources than the national average. We also have a program already in place that you've been presented with before called 20 Degrees, which focuses on improving housing quality in some of our communities in higher need. So the program has operated in Makatu very successfully and in Te Rere Atakahia. That's a regional program that council is a partner in. 20 Degrees already employ young people to work with households around their, how to improve the quality of their homes, how to access home insulation grants, and how to essentially draft-proof their homes, those sorts of things. So part of what we're talking about here is how do we work with 20 Degrees and see if there is an opportunity to create some pathways for some local people, so local youth living in Makatu, who may be able to assist with doing this work. Part of what 20 Degrees does is they go into homes and they carry out a home assessment and identify what changes that household could make to improve the quality of the house. Now, you can imagine in a community like Makatu, and this is just one example, but if that is a local person who knows the people that they're working with, then your ability to get engagement and to get, more momentum around the work is greater. So we haven't delved into that too far yet. As I said, it is just an idea at this stage, but it does link back to what we know is an area where we could make some significant change, which is in improving home heating devices so that they're more energy efficient. And how do we then bring young people into that conversation?
Right. Do you want to add to that, Jacob?
No, that was it.
Okay. Any further speakers? Councillor Henry.
Well, I'd just like to point out on page 91, number 12, key objectives of this initiative are exactly what we were talking about in an earlier discussion today, to develop rangatahi's potential and capacity to lead. So, and that's just saying that I think it's a very good initiative and we should be supporting it as we supported the other.
Councillor Coxhead.
So just remind me the Inspiring Stories involvement. Are you members of, or how's that work?
So Inspiring Stories is a charity. They already deliver the Impact Challenge program on a national level, and so they've got a proven model that works to engage young people in taking climate change on a local level and leading it at a local level. We've partnered with Tauranga City Council and Bay Plenty Regional Council to provide some funding for them to deliver it on a local level, so on a sub-regional level, and so an extra offering of the same program.
So they're funded by local bodies, this organisation largely?
No, a variety of different funders as
So
well.
yeah, I've had a good look at them. I can't find their funding sources, that was all.
Sorry, no, that's Jody.
Yeah, I'd be interested in who funds them.
Yeah, I can look into that and get
Thank
back to
you.
you.
You'll come back to all of us?
Yes, sure.
Yeah. Right. Further speakers? Andy.
I'll just have a little bit of fun here. So this is my entry into the political speech zone. Just engaging youth. I support that in principle. Getting youth involved in issues bigger than themselves is fantastic. And this particular one is an easy one to get youth hooked into because we're talking about the future of the planet. And I just note that the language that we use certainly heats up that debate when in this report it says that we're facing a severe planetary crisis. So it's certainly a subject that would be easy to hook youth into, but I would caution about youth being involved in this, in that, the topic in the public arena has become more a religion than a science, where there is only one narrative that is allowed through the gate. Our mainstream media make sure that that is controlled, and so this narrative is controlled from one viewpoint. That if youth were to get involved, that they have the opportunity to view the broad spectrum of the issue, and that the crisis nature of the terminology that drives thinking a particular way is perhaps challenged in a way that allows them to explore contra-narratives and allows them to weigh up the issues at hand. The youth are indoctrinated well enough in school that they have got this topic in their mind, so council bringing it isn't something that's going to be new to them. And I just note that we say we want to be evidence-based, and so I would suggest that to be to make evidence-based decisions, we need to have they need to be exposed to the broad view. So that's my political statement. First one.
Thank you, Andy. And one of the things I think about the climate change, I don't want to hear any young person saying blah, blah, blah ever again. And it's such a sad thing when on the international stage, that's what you hear. And it sort of destroys the whole argument. So, Jody, how can you protect the youth that are going to become these ambassadors to give them a broad view as so that they don't take sides, that they continue to learn about what it's all about?
Through you, Madam Chair, I'd like to just refer you back to your previous conversation that you had around empowering communities and just reflect on what youth-led actually means. So this is about empowering youth to explore their own leadership capabilities, develop their own skills, and make their own decisions about how they want to respond to those things. And that is exactly what the Impact Lab does. So it builds capacity and capability and skills, but it doesn't indoctrinate, and it does not tell youth how they need to act. This is youth leading it for themselves. And I think, Jacob is actually a case in point. Jacob is the demographic in the profile that you are all discussing, and I think has demonstrated that he has more than his own capability to understand the matters that are in front of him and respond to them. So it is not our job to protect youth, it is our job to empower youth and give them the skills and capability to be able to work some of these things out and to be able to actually lead their own action against it and lead their own actions in the way that they want to do that. So that's empowering communities. That's also your strategic priority of responding to climate change, and that is how we've shaped these initiatives. So.
Right. Member Ray.
Thanks. I'd like to speak in support of this. Obviously, my role too is something similar. I am a climate change coordinator in Makitu. We're a bit unique, to be fair, because we actually have our own climate plan that the community sat there and created over numerous workshops. And so my role is then to take the plan and pick out the things that are, easy to achieve, such as we want to have sustainable food source for our community, for things such as pandemics where we rely on the supermarket, for example. So that's something that I can work to achieve, to apply for small amounts of funding to achieve that for the community because that's what they wanted. And yes, we do have some slightly larger scale issues on our plan, such as managed retreats. But those are things that, we're not there to tell people what it is that they want or that they're gonna do. as a young person. We're just there to support and guide and sort of just advocate them in the right direction as the youth. I'm not technically not youth. I mean, I don't fall in the under 25-year-old bracket, but it's basically the same thing.
We
So
can't- we
I
can't
do
tell.
support 100% this, and I do see the need for the young people to be involved and that they want this. So it makes sense for us then to support that, whatever that looks like.
Further speakers, we have Mayor James.
I'll be supporting this, but I do want to just reiterate actually what Jody just said, that responding to climate change is one of our strategic priorities. And this committee is not the opportunity to relitigate whether we believe in anthropogenic climate change or not. That is not really beyond much doubt, and it's certainly not our position to be thinking that we can make that decision. All major parties are thoroughly on board with that in central government, and how we deal with that is very much an open question, and how we empower youth and so on. Absolutely, we should be discussing that, but trying to circle back to youth should be given alternative views, and I'm all for having an open mind, but the tenor of it is suggesting a little bit of, dare I say, denial or scepticism, which I don't think is useful in the context of having already put responding to climate change as our strategic priority. So that's just something I just highlight, that let's focus on what's in front of us, not trying to relitigate the whole climate change debate.
Right, Councillor Coxhead.
I just want to applaud Andy for his speech, and really the essence of what he was trying to say was keeping an open mind is really important at all times, and absolutely get involved in in tackling some serious issues. That's a fantastic thing for younger people to be involved in, very much encourage that. But always remember, science is not settled. So that's really all that Andy is saying. And just make sure you keep an open mind and think for yourself. Critical thinking is hugely important.
Thank you. I think probably, Member Clements?
Madam Chair, I'd just also like to support Andy, and that is that there are so many counter stories, and I think Andy's saying is, let's ensure that our youth have an open mind as to all aspects of climate change. It's not a denialist. There are anthropological impacts on the environment, absolutely, but it's a matter of degree, and it's a matter of people having a wider perspective. There are some very erudite and more intelligent people than me who've written books on the counter story. So I think if we are going to engage with youth, I think they should not be just given one angle or in terms of the perspective, but in fact a wide range of angles and perspectives, so that they are an open mind as to where we sit with climate change, rather than just continuing one story and one line that becomes politically acceptable. And as long as we are, we absolutely support it, provided that there is a wide exchange of views about climate change. Thank you.
Right. One of the things I think you need to do is to teach how you protect yourselves when you go to the doors. You note that people are using wood and coal to heat themselves, and because of the financial crisis, that may be all they can afford to do. And so you don't want to put our young people in a position where they get abused. Which I think is really quite important. So, Jody, did you want to comment on that? Well, we have the recommendations before us, and I'd need Councillor Henry moves, Member Ray seconds the recommendations. Sorry? I just called for a mover and a seconder, and you put your hand up.
Mike? I was going to speak to make the recommendation, but after listening to Laura's very impassionate speech, I'd like to give her the opportunity, and she said she'd like to move the recommendation.
Well, she was seconding it anyway, so you moved it and seconded. It's open for debate.
I'll second it then.
Member Gowdy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I note on page 91, participant recruitment and introductions. March, April, end of March now. We've never heard of this before. Or I haven't. What is the point? Blame me. How's that going to take part? Who's going to take part? What demographic or what communities are going to be focused on?
I can speak to that one. So because the Impact Challenge sub-regional program is being run through Inspiring Stories, they have hired a facilitator to specifically run this entire process from start to finish. They've got an existing network of contacts within universities, tech colleges, schools, other sorts of organisations that young people regularly engage with. And so they've been undertaking that on behalf of the 3 councils. One of the strengths of this process and using Inspiring Stories to facilitate it is that it's not, completely council facing.
Thank you for that. We're not having questions anymore. We're supposed to be debating the recommendations. Either you support them or you don't. So could someone tell me if they support them or they don't? So there's no discussion. I'll put the motion in favour or say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. We then move to the delegation of decision-making for facilities in the community fund. That's page 148.
Thank you very much. And good luck with all you do. You, future leader, Prime Minister of New Zealand.
What? And so, Matt, you'd like to introduce this subject?
Kia ora tātou. So, through the chair, this presents the community and facilities in the community fund, the other way around. We're seeking for it to be opened up for the community to receive applications and a subcommittee of this committee to be formed to allocate that funding. So there's $100,000 there. That's funded through financial contributions. So it's then targeted towards those growth communities and the criteria in the report.
Right.
But happy to take it as read.
Thank you, Matt. I need a nomination for Te Puke Makatu Ward. Murray, did you want to
Madam
speak?
Chair, I was just going to suggest that the community conveners for the 3 wards be appointed, and obviously, in the absence of Richard, it'd be Andy as the deputy convener. So it's Anne Henry, Don Thwaites and Andy Wickers.
Say again, Don Thwaites, Anne Henry and
Andy Wickers.
Andy Wickers.
I
Hold on.
just had a question. What? Can I just ask if there's a possibility for particularly a chair of a particular community board being involved in this?
No, I think that's not appropriate on this occasion. It's district-wide and it's a councillor's role. So you'll just have to stand at the next election, Cassie. So I've got nominations. Is there a seconder for that? Councillor Sol. I'll put the motions. Those in favour will say aye. Against? Carried. Sorry?
There's no debate on that one?
No, we've done it.
Yeah, I live in a hard road here, I'm all for it.
Can I have a
Councillor Henry?
a clarification question, please? How sensitive is the information that the conveners or the people who have just been nominated, or just been approved now, to include their chairs of relevant communities where the applications are coming from within the discussion? Because it is confidential, but I'm just asking the question.
It's just the same as we operate every other funding proposal. When we've got councillors involved, you'll get reports too, and applications will come before you. You can encourage people to make applications. That's your right.
The decision-making process is what I'm talking about including a relevant community chair to the area that the application may be.
I think through the chair, I think Margaret's already mentioned that it's a district-wide one targeted towards growth areas, and the subcommittee's there to balance that off against the different areas. Community boards have a very specific focus, and that's their mandate. So it might not be appropriate in this circumstance.
And then it comes back to full council for ratification anyway. So it's over to the three of you to determine. So thank you for that. And we don't have any information now, do we?
One information process, digital.
Oh, the digital inclusion, right. We've got that one, the reports before us. Are you dealing with that too, Matt?
We've got a gentleman who has been sitting in here the whole meeting waiting for this opportunity to speak to the digital.
What's his name?
He will be introduced.
Oh, right.
His name is Brett.
I hope, sir, you can make it more exciting than it reads. It's a throwaway line.
He's external.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Welcome to council, and thank you for sitting in there so patiently for all this time.
It's been fascinating. I say that sincerely.
So you can, we work hard.
I know.
So, sir, it's over to you.
Kia ora koutou, Community Committee. I'm Sam. I'm in the community team here at Council, and with me today I have Brett Bailey. So today is just information for a seat, just really to inform you all of some of the digital inclusion initiatives that we have operating in the district. A lot of this work, just a brief background before Brett gives a short presentation. A lot of this work stems from the COVID times, so when people were digitally isolated. Even though COVID's finished, from some of that work, we identified that that's still a big thing within our community. So there's pockets within our communities that don't have access to internet, digital devices, and their digital literacy is quite low, which needs to be, in modern day society, as you all know, we need to be digitally enabled to keep up with society. So from that background work, To My Digital was established, which is a collaboration of organisations working together to target a community need. So some of those organisations are Social Link, Potiri Wellness Centre, Mercury Power Company, Western Bay District Council, Katikati Community Centre, Accessible Properties, Families Achieving Balance, and Huria Trust. So To My Digital was essentially, it's been operating for about 4 months, and it's having great progress, and there's a lot of work to be done out there, and the demand is huge for the sort of service we're providing. So from here, what I'll do is I'll pass over to Brett, and he can give you some more insights into how the program's been operating and running to date.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you very much for the opportunity to come and speak today. I'm really grateful. Just wondering if we can go to the first slide, please. Oh, do I control it? Oh, have you? Oh, this is fancy. So as Sam said, that this came out of COVID-19 lockdown, and we identified that there are a number of people who were being left behind in this digital economy. Lots of children going home from school or staying at home and unable to connect to the education department, and therefore were out of school for the 5 weeks When coming back to school, they were left behind because many didn't have digital devices, many weren't connected to the internet, and everything was moving online very quickly. In a study, if you go to the next slide, Sam, in a study done by the Spark Foundation, so prior to becoming or setting up To My Digital, I was on the Spark Foundation. I was a trustee of the Spark Foundation in Auckland, and we commissioned an economic study into the benefits of digital inclusion, which I've included some of the key points there. I assumed that they were included in the pack, were they? So as read, so what we've identified is that the impact is significant to communities to get people online, socially, from an educational perspective, and for those looking to gain employment as well, given that most employment opportunities are online now. And I can provide a link to the full report for those who are interested in that full report. Next slide. So first of all, we're grateful for council's support. It's been fantastic. We have been inundated with requests for connectivity, for laptops, and for training. I think what I've really enjoyed about this role is the collaboration within the community, and those from Te Puke Library through to the local maraes, through to the hub out in Te Puke. There's been a number of organisations who have come on board and really worked with us to get people connected. No, I'll stay on that for a sec. So we are also been looking for additional funding to help us collaborate even further. At the moment, it's just me, 24 hours a week. And as Sam said, the requests coming in are just constant. I think last week I put out 20 laptops. When I leave here today, I'll be going to deliver another 10 or so laptops into the community. We had been working with the Ministry of Education as well, because they are providing families that have never been connected who have children at school. They were providing free connectivity. Unfortunately, the new government has put a hold on this for now. So we're having to scramble to look for other internet providers to help us roll out this program. I think that, and I've heard a lot, I mean, you're obviously the community committee. The value of the community working together has really, really helped what we're doing here at To My Digital. Everybody from accessible property, so our ability to work with a new property development that has fibre running past it allows us to be ready for when families move in. So again, I just want to say we did a community training session in Makahai Marae, and we had 30 people turn up for that, 25 to 30 people, and it was really successful, really basic training, the ability of using smart devices, how to use Wi-Fi, how to get onto internet banking, and also how to be aware of fraud. We don't want to connect these families and then have them defrauded a week later. So I think that's pretty much it from me. I was asked to keep it fairly brief, and I don't want Madam Chairperson to cut me off, so I will leave it. I'll leave it at that. Any questions?
Yes. What percentage of the people in Te Puke now, especially with young people, have got laptops?
I couldn't give you a specific percentage, but we have over 50 laptops that have gone into the community in the last 4 months. And then we have had on top of that, so a lot of them are with connections, internet connections, and we've had another group on top of that who are just internet connections, so an additional 12 on top of that. So we're probably looking at 60 families that have been supported at the moment, with many more. It's starting to grow.
do you find that old computers are given to you? Take, for example, the mayor belongs to the Katikati Rotary Club, and they have some of their seniors skilled at renovating the computers that they've got. Do you have anything like that in Te Puke?
Absolutely. So we have partnered with Recycle a Device, which was an initiative that we funded when I was at Spark, and they take old laptops and they use them to train students who volunteer their time to refurbish them, clean the laptops, and then put them back out into the community. So our broken ones that are coming in are going to Recycle a Device, and then Recycle a Device are giving us functioning laptops in return.
The first computer I had was from Hertz, and a friend culled that one for me, and I learned how to use it. So I know the benefits of having assistance. So where can we take it from here? You need funding base for support. You need, and presumably the matching fund or the facilities fund might be something that we could look at. So Jody, can you give us some guidance, please?
Through you, Madam Chair. So really the report today is just an information receipt. So it was really an update for you and a program that we're already a funding partner in. So there's no further funding being requested from council at this point. It's just so that you're aware of what's happening.
Right, but you must know of companies who renew their computers, their laptops, and are prepared to give them away?
Yes, that's a huge part of Brent's role, is to make those connections with those companies, including us. We are using our laptops through the program.
So we have Mercury Energy, we have Council, we have Securicom based out of Auckland, and if any of you know of organisations wanting to get rid of old laptops, then we will happily take them. We also have a responsible e-waste program, which is through Recycle a Device as well.
Thank you. Member Gowdy.
There's just one question. I hear a lot about what's going into the Puke community. Does it extend to Katikatwai Beach, Omakura?
Absolutely. This we ran a pilot a couple of years ago before I came on board, and there were some pretty big learnings from that pilot. So we decided that a second pilot was in order, just to get some of those our systems in place. It made sense in Te Puke because I'm based in Te Puke a couple of days a week. So it made sense to do it there. Part of the model that we operate is we're not reinventing the wheel in terms of trying to establish relationships with families and build trust. We're working with the social workers who already have that trust. And I think that has been a huge benefit, because the social workers are doing all the heavy lifting, and then we're providing the support in the background. So yes, to answer your question, yep, we're on our way.
You're on your way.
Yeah, we're on our way. We're creeping south.
South.
I think that's the direction.
North.
North, sorry. I came from up north, so yeah, I'm a bit confused.
Yes, and I know that the initial program, there was about 12 or 15 laptops went out through Waihi Beach School, and we may be lucky and get a hub at Waihi Beach in the next couple of years, and we would like to be able to do the same there. Particularly I see there about Chromebook education and support, and the kids' little building, what do they call them? Their little Chromebook programming.
Oh yeah, I think one of the next goals is to start some more code clubs, get these young children writing code and building their own robots, and because these are the skills that will, one of the things that we want to do is we want to provide basic training that feeds into all the other training opportunities that are out there now through Digital Natives Academy. They're running programs teaching children to write games and program. So you know, our goal is to be a conduit to those organisations. We had one young woman, the first laptop I delivered, who wrote back and said her husband was in jail. She had a number of children. They lived in a really small place, and she's now studying at Waikato University to become a counsellor, which I thought was a great news story. And we're getting more and more of those every day.
Thank you. Andy?
You're looking for tips?
Always.
Kiwifruit post-harvest have large IT departments, and I observe bins and bins full of discarded computer gear. So I would point you in that direction because they are big businesses.
Oh, thank you. So who was that again? Sorry.
Any kiwifruit
Right, the big. Okay.
Eastpac, Seeka, Trevelyan's, Impact.
I'll be out there tomorrow.
DMS.
Well, there you are. It's connections.
Yeah. No, this is exactly what we're looking for.
Councillor Wickers is networked in there, so I recommend you work with him. We've got Anne, Councillor Henry.
So I'm looking on the Social Link site about the Tuamai Digital Inclusion Project. So I'm looking at, you know, the future, and I guess, are you the project coordinator at Western Bay?
Yes, I am.
Okay. So it's still in the pilot was what I'm reading in the note. So, and this will probably be Sam, you might be able to input into this, because we have had a big conversation about longevity of and you've sat in and you've listened to all that, so you would have seen the relevance there. So can you shed some light on, you know, this is a great thing that's happening for the Western Bay, and how will it, the longevity of it, because it's always going to be a need.
That's what he's
There's
done.
going to be children who don't have that accessibility.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely there's a need, and we, at our last steering group meeting, we talked about the need to bring on some more resource to help, and I always look at that as the time to start looking for our future leaders. So I'm no longer under 25, so, you know, we're looking for people who can come through, learn about what we're doing, and then move into these roles as needed.
Right.
Right, but we also know that there are a lot of retired men out there who've got the skills, who can actually do the work and can support you in what you're doing. We have Grant.
Yeah, Brett, just as you were speaking, I had something that you could possibly incorporate in your kaupapa. My daughter, a little while ago, had some issues with her laptop. I don't know if she lost her password and couldn't get back into it, and her husband took it to some dodgy place with someone who fixes computers, and it ended up making it worse, and it come back and it just sat there, and she ended up going to buy a new computer. But I'm just wondering if you were able to offer a service where you actually, people like that, you could actually they could bring their computer in knowing it's coming to a safe place, you know, for the sake of their data and their photos maybe, and restore it to working capacity.
Yeah, that's probably not what we can do. I mean, I can recommend that when it comes to end of life, that if they want to donate it to recycle a device, because it'll be put to good use. But certainly one of the things that we've tried to avoid is getting into an IT support desk type role, because it's complicated. It's the same with engaging with any Microsoft licensing, or we send out laptops that have basic Word function and the ability to connect to the internet and a browser. Many of these families at the moment are sharing just a cell phone. Mum has, or dad has a cell phone, and that's used amongst the whole family to try and do homework and stuff like that. So our goal is keep it basic. If the laptop breaks, we'll replace it, and then we'll send it off to recycle a device.
But maybe even if you can have a list of approved repairers, or you know, like the old man in the back shed who's good at
So
that sort of
diverting
stuff.
people, absolutely.
Member Ray, please.
Yeah. So, but yeah, certainly Anne's suggestion about involving youth as ambassadors or working with you, it sounds like a great idea as well.
Member Ray?
Sure, thank you.
Yeah, I'd just like to speak in support of this program. So my daughter is a recipient of one of the laptops that came through Potiri Trust. Obviously, it was to assist her with her NCEA, and that has proven to be a really wonderful thing. Also, the training with the koeke, that is huge, because my dad, you know, he's 80 and he cannot email anyone. So he has to come to my address and I have to do it for him, and he actually misses out on a lot of opportunities because of that. And so personally, to me, this is 100% a need, and I would love to see it progress and grow to everybody who needs it, because it's wicked.
So you're moving the recommendations.
Well, I don't think there was any, but I think I just would love to support it out loud. But yes, if there's some recommendation, I would like to do that.
And
that it be
sorry?
received.
Well, you're moving that the information be received, yes. And you're seconding it, Councillor Sol.
There's no recommendations.
Well, we've just made one. I think, sir, that this is really important, and I was cynical before you started, but honestly, for a lot of people, it's hard work when your computer won't work and you're trying to find your way through it. So I think this has been really worthwhile, and I thank you very much. And we receive the information. In favour will say aye, against carried, and thank you for coming.
Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. And while I've got you all here, there is a website too. So To My Digital, if you type that in your browser, it'll come up, and that's a sort of contact point for people in the community to register interest.
Could you put that in the minutes? That would be good. So where am I now?
Just declare the meeting closed.
So thank you for your attendance. I declare the meeting closed, and we'll start the workshop in 5 minutes. John has got to go away at 1 o'clock, so I thought we would keep working.